Hello guys and welcome back to Custom Gamer. My name is Daz and this is the show where we talk about level design while playing cool maps. Today we're playing a Half-Life 2 Episode 2 release which came out a week or two ago on planetphillip.com. It is called Year Long Alarm. It is by a man called Chuck Wilson, who seems to have his claws very much in the game dev industry. I checked out his portfolio. It's got a couple of maps for Source-based games, including some mods and of course this release, and he did a level for Titanfall. I'm not sure if it was in the full game or a DLC map, but today we're just going to have a look at this map as it's a very well thought out piece of level design, I think. It's got some great kind of messaging to the player and introduces some cool mechanics in inventive ways. So really good to have a look at stuff like this, so let's get into it. So even in this first room here there's some pretty interesting stuff going on. For starters, there's a gravity gun in the centre of the room. An interesting thing about this is that if the player misses it and tries to get to the doorway without picking it up, there's a giant crate in the way. It's deliberately the giant sized crate because you can't pick that up with the use key. So it forces the player to find the gravity gun in order to move it, which is pretty cool, I think. And you've also got some other mechanics introduced here. You've got the simple plug puzzle where you just plug into the socket and it turns on, and then of course you've got the try button, classic Half-Life 2 puzzle where you have to there's something in the way of the button and you have to remove it in order to make the button work. In this case it was a crowbar, which is quite handy. And now we get our first instance of Chekhov's gun with the gunship flying overhead. We're definitely going to be doing something about that a bit later on. So this area is a fantastic vista that shows you lots of different parts of the level that we're going to be revisiting later on. So this is kind of, think of this as like the central spire of the map. You're always kind of reintroduced to this area from different vantage points, and it's kind of, you can kind of see how far you've come in the map just by looking around and see what you've been to before and what you haven't been to yet. So it's a great way to kind of keep track of the progress you're making. It looks lovely as well. There's some fantastic lighting in this map. Great use of spotlights to kind of highlight areas of the environment that you should be paying attention to. Especially in this outdoor area here, you've got these big spotlights kind of mounted against walls that kind of shine down on the various objectives placed throughout the map for you. And there's a lot of clever designs here as well, so everything that's placed around this area is placed very, very specifically, and as it should be with all level design really. When you're dealing with abstract spaces like this, it's always good to think about how every little thing will, you know, influence the player's decision making and how they're going to play your level. This is a great example here. So you've got a see-through glass window with a zombie banging against it, with again another try button console in front of it. So the zombie's position here is just to get the player to look through the window. Again, game environments can be fairly static, so any kind of movement or animation will generally get the player's attention. And again here you've got a vent placed against the wall, a vent cover, sorry, placed against the wall here, which gets the player's attention because they know that vent covers usually lead to secret areas or, you know, vents leading to other areas of the map. And this vent would be really, really hard to spot if there was nothing kind of getting the player to look around in that corner. So I think it's really, really cool just placing little objects in the environment which mean something to the player and get them to explore further. So as we come around here, again the level designer's got us to look through this window and notice the button console with the red button on it. So now once we've killed that zombie we can hit the button to activate the lift. As soon as I finish meddling with all these doors. And again here, as soon as you hit the button you have a view of the opposite direction in the map, and you see the lift come up, and there's, you know, a big wailing siren to get your attention, and again the spotlights as well. So it's really, really nicely thought out. The glass works both ways to get your attention to what's happening in the level. Now the nice thing about this area here is once you've been given the objective of get to the lift, which you've just activated, there's a couple of different ways you can actually go about it. You can jump through the glass here like I've done. You can go back the way you came through the vent, or there's just a simple door in the try-button room that you can walk through and then knock down the fence. So it's a really nice bit of non-linearity where the player has an objective, but it's just up to them how they reach it. This is a nice little mechanic that's repeated a few times as well. You can see here the whole area kind of interconnects, and no matter which way you go, you kind of always arrive back at the lift, which I really like. Now we can go on it. Now as we're going down the lift here, we're treated with another nice view of this deep vista here. And we're also shown a shotgun on the ground here. The thing I like about this is that generally weapons lying around on the ground are really easy to miss by the player. But in this case you're stuck in a lift and can't move, so your view is kind of taken up by what's happening outside. And you can see the shotgun straight away as you start going down the lift, and it's kind of there, kind of taunting you like, pick me up, pick me up. But you can't really turn away from it because it's the only real interesting place to look at. So I really like that. It's a great way to solve the issue of players just walking straight by weapons, or just really kind of throwing weapons at them that some games do just to make sure you pick them up. Now we're going to go and explore a little bit more of the level. This area here I think spends a little bit too long kind of indoors without any kind of big moments. It's very much a kind of labyrinthine area where there's lots of rooms, and each one has interesting things to do in it, and it's really well thought out, but it just feels a little bit monotonous after a while. I think the player just spends too much time in all these little rooms kind of poking around. You really don't feel like you're making much progress. It's the only part of the level I really didn't like from kind of pacing view. I thought the rest of it was handled exceptionally well. I think if perhaps an area had re-emerged back into the vista again, where it doesn't currently, it probably would have helped a lot. Because that was currently the rhythm I was getting into, is just, you know, play through part of the map, see how far I've got by looking around in the vista, and then going back into the level and you know, trying to work out some more progress. Saying that though, like I mentioned, each room is well thought out. There's some cool fights to be had in each one, and some interesting puzzles. And again here we've got another metal bar to take down all these zombies with. It's just a nice bit of fun. It's completely optional, but it's a nice way to take out zombies. And again, the player's already seen this mechanic used before in the map to open up the gate earlier. So it's a nice way of reusing mechanics, but for slightly different things. Again, the lighting here as well really gets your attention on all the zombies at the end here when you round the corner. They're really nicely picked out by the spotlight placed slightly down the road here. The map is absolutely gorgeous. Great lighting, great use of props, and you really feel like you're in the intestines of some facility here, which I like. Jump through the window again here. And if we check back down the corridor that we came from, there is a secret up here. And you can just drop back down to the stairs there if you like, or you can run back this way. Now this area, you can see through this vent here. If I hadn't found that vent earlier, there would have been a supply crate in there, which is what happened to me on my first time through this map. I spent ages trying to work out how to get to it. It's one hell of a backtrack to find that thing again, I tell you. It's just sitting there taunting me. Now we emerge back out here. Again, this is kind of like a vista, I guess you see, if you turn around and look back. You've seen this area from the opposite side of that fence before, but I don't think it was really enough to make me feel like I'd made progress. I'm going to launch into I guess the second chapter of the map. It's got this really quick chapter titles, which I'm not really a fan of. I think perhaps if the chapter text had come up as you're walking down the stairs, and then the Metrocops had burst into the room just as it was fading away, I think that probably could have highlighted the chapter change a little better. But for the most part it's fine, it's a minor niggle I suppose. I like the way this room's set up with the kind of dual height, so the Metrocops can jump down if they like. Makes the room a little bit more interesting from a gameplay perspective. You can't just run all around it. There's a little bit of cover and some obstacles for both you and the Metrocops. I like the Metrocop down here as well at the bottom of the stairwell, because this is definitely a one-way jump here. Players might have a little bit of hesitation of jumping down, but having the Metrocop down there kind of shows them, okay, you haven't been here yet because there's enemies there, so it's cool to jump down. This is actually the way to continue the level, so well thought out here. So this is a really neat mechanic, which is really nicely introed, I think. So the head crab jumps out the vent here, and you've got a lot of visual language going on here, which tells the player what to do. So you've got the two vent openings, you've got the explosive barrels on the opposite side of the door, and it just works. You just know what you have to do without any kind of heavy-handed, you know, scripting or, you know, text on the screen, anything like that. It's just using what Half-Life 2 has taught you as a player in an inventive way to create a cool mechanic for your map, which is the way it should be done. Of course, now we emerge back into the vista again. We're right at the bottom of this vista now, so lots of progress has been made. It really is a nice looking map. I almost thought that barn down there is an area you get to later on in the map, but I'm actually mistaken. It's a completely different kind of area. You can search around here, find some more supplies. Always nice to have these optional, I don't like to call them hidden, but kind of optional areas where you can find a few supplies if you decide to explore around a bit. It's always nice to reward that kind of behaviour. I like the fact that you can hear a little bit of combat here. It kind of sets you up for the next area. This is a really fun kind of arena. I always like it when Combine soldiers have an extra threat as well as you to deal with. It makes these areas feel much more dynamic. This area is set up in a pretty interesting way. It's like a giant figure of 8. If you imagine the truck in the centre here as one of the loops around the 8, then you've got the building, which I'm looking at now. It's kind of the other half of the 8. Loops like this are always great to use in combat because it gives players and enemies different ways to kind of flank around the player and create interesting gameplay. So as a player I can decide to come around this way and flank them from this side, or I can go around the other way, hide behind the truck. It just creates a really interesting environment to actually fight in. I think too many maps I've played where you just put enemies in front of you in a room with kind of not a lot of cover, not a lot of kind of optional ways to go. It's just kind of stuff in a room that shoots at you, and that gets old really, really fast. If you can create a kind of dynamic environment like this, which gives options to both the player and the AI, then that's definitely the way you want to do things. And figure of 8 loops or other kind of looped environments are fantastic for this. Now we've got some more stuff that we've seen before. We know we have to connect those up, as we've done it twice before in the map already. And there's some visual language here telling us that there's something going on at the top there which we need to look at. And we know that these vents here are very important, and we can throw grenades through them to activate things. The thing I like about this is that if the player runs out of grenades, they're absolutely screwed here. So there's a very handy box of grenades really highlighted for the player right there. If they look down, they'll see it right there, which I really like. It's well thought out. Of course, throwing the grenade up there gives us this, which lets us connect the 2 plugs, and then we can activate the try button, which activates the lift. I think the lift could have done with making a little bit more noise on the way down. I was a little bit confused the first time I played through this area as to what that button actually did. But again, you've got the giant kind of klaxon when the lift reaches the bottom, which is the same noise that all the other lifts in the map make. So again, very well thought out. And back up we go. And once again we get the familiar sound of the Combine dropship. The level design is really teasing us with this gunship throughout the entirety of the map. The first time you see that giant vista at the beginning, the gunship is flying overhead, and now again you can hear it outside before you even venture out there. So he's really kind of teasing you with, yes, you're going to have to deal with this thing at some point or another. Really reminds me of how Valve introed the hunter-killer chopper in not episode 2, but the original Half-Life when you're in the canals. I thought that was very, very cool. You can grab some supplies here. This is where the level design opens up again quite a lot into kind of a new area. Yeah, there's a lot of natural foliage and outside structures in this next part of the map, which are really, really beautiful and are still designed very much with gameplay in mind. So even this vista you're seeing here, it's a chance for the player to see a combat space before any enemies actually appear. You get a really nice view of it here, which serves it kind of a dual purpose, so it looks great and the player can survey the environment before they're going deeper into the map. And of course the flare really gives it away. And again here you've got this giant open area with lots of little loops in it, created by things like rocks, trees, cars. So there's always a couple of choices, both to enemies and the player, about which way to go. There's just more of them in this case. So instead of being like an 8 loop, if you can imagine a couple of 8 loops joined together, that's what this entire area feels like. So you've always got a couple of options of which way you want to go next, and the AI do too. Even within that, there's other options as well, so you can choose to go on the high ground up here, you can choose to stay in the lake and use the concrete pillars of the bridge as cover. So it's a really, really nice area. Another interesting point about this area is that it's reused quite a lot as well, generally on a kind of vertical scale. So you start off at the very bottom of it here, and then if you look up here you can see other buildings and things up above you, and we'll get to those a bit later on. And you generally be looking back down onto the map where you've already been. So it feels nice. I think we've just about found all the supplies here. Of course, you know me, I have to go and check absolutely every corner. But again, this area isn't superfluous at all. The player could come up here at the very start and, you know, have high ground on the enemies in the basin there. Got some more barnacles to deal with. I love these little drains in the ceiling here, because later on when you come back and you're at the top you can actually spot the same texture but from above, and it just really reminded me that I've already been to this area but from below first. It was really, really cool feeling. The hidden supply crate up there, strangely, unless the item kind of rested on the pipe up there, it didn't seem to drop anything, so that was a bit weird. Anyway, let's carry on. So we just had a big fight in that basin area, so now the map's winded down a little bit, generally for pacing issues. I think it probably could have kept on going a little bit longer with like a big fight in these tunnels, but there's just a couple of Combine soldiers. I mean, I don't dislike it, but I just think the author could have pushed the combat a little bit further in these tunnels. I'm still kind of chomping for a bit more action at this point. I think it winded down perhaps a little bit too quickly. Grab some more supplies here. Again, there's a little bit of environmental storytelling going on here as well, with the Combine soldiers like burning civilians. You can see the big fire pit down there with all the charred bodies in it. I don't know if there's a little secret in that room, like a supply crate or something, but it just felt a little bit superfluous. Now, again, this is my second or third time through the map, and this gets me every time. I don't know why, but every time I see that texture on the wall, I have to shoot it, and of course, I'm turned around and don't notice all the barrels falling down the pit here. So yeah, that almost killed me. There's something about that grate texture. I just always want to shoot it. I'm sure it's been done in a couple of other custom maps I've played, and that's where I'm remembering it from. It's the trouble with playing so many different custom maps for Half-Life 2 is that the visual language in your head can get a little bit messy at times because different authors do things slightly differently, and yeah. It's a trap you really don't want to fall into. If you're wondering how to set something up, you should always look at how the Valve maps did it first. If you're doing a variation on that, then fine, you know, set it up however you like, but if you're doing something that Valve did in Half-Life 2, you really want to look at the language they used in the maps to describe that particular feature that you're working on, so that players don't get confused. A great example is things like glass. So in Half-Life 2, you've got the kind of sheet glass, which is always breakable, and then you've got the kind of glass with the kind of crisscross texture in it, which is always unbreakable. And yet some custom maps get that mixed up or get it wrong and have breakable, you know, glass that should technically be unbreakable, as that's the kind of language provided by Valve. But it's always good to keep that stuff in check, otherwise you're just going to confuse your players. Right, so we can look back down into the area we just came from. Now this door here is so easy to miss. I spent like 20 minutes my first time through here. I think I was live streaming it, I can't remember now, it's been a while. But yeah, I got very, very lost in this area because I didn't see that doorway in the fence. I guess I just completely overlooked it, but yeah, I ended up finding a way out into the, out of bounds into the map in this area by stacking a load of stuff, trying to work out where to go next. And I just saw the door there and, you know, it's like, oh. Incidentally, there's those drain covers on the ground which match the ones the barnacles were on earlier, which I just thought was a cool little touch. So again here, we've got the same kind of visual language, but just a different hole to throw the grenade through. And yep, that was probably the worst grenade throw ever. So let's try that one again. So again, this is similar to the vent with the head crab jumping out of it. You've got the same type of visual language. Explosive barrels on the opposite side, the door is locked, and there's a hole for you to throw a grenade through. So you can even do variations on your own set of visual language, and it works just fine. You have to make sure it's presented well to the player. So this house reminds me again of, if you remember, I was talking at the beginning about the area where you had a little bit of non-linearity of how you wanted to get back to the lift at the very start of the map. This area is slightly similar in that you hit this combine terminal which turns off the combine force fields, and now it's basically up to you how you want to get down there. You can have a look through here, there's a hole in the wall there, you can drop down. You search around the house some more, there's some railings you can jump over, and again it's just adding another little bit of non-linear... Oh my... Why can't I say that word today? Non-linearity to the map that gives the player some control over how they want to play. I mean, it's small, yes, but even giving the player a little bit of choice like this really, really helps the level feel, you know... It's very, very easy for a level to fall into a very linear motion where you're just moving forwards all the time and never revisiting, never giving the player any real choice about how they want to do something. So having these little nuggets like this is really, really helpful. I would have liked it if there was more stuff like this, but you know, I'll take what I can get. And now we get to the ending. And honestly, I'm not a fan of this ending. For the only point that it's set up extremely well. Like, technically, there's nothing wrong with it. It's really well laid out. It's an interesting fight, you know, there's interesting cover. It's just the fact that a gunship fight followed by fade to black, I've just seen it so many times now in Half-Life maps. Now, maybe this isn't really a problem if you haven't played a lot of Half-Life 2 maps, and so this might feel fresh to you. but I feel like every other Half-Life 2 release ends with a gunship fight followed by Fade to Black. It just felt a little bit underwhelming to me. It's always hard for a game that's been out so long to, you know, keep the gameplay fresh and interesting. It's always a really hard thing to do, especially for kind of die-hard Half-Life 2 fans that probably played so many maps by now. They kind of know what to expect for just about everything. So yeah, I mean, like I said, there's nothing wrong with it. It's technically excellent. It's just that I've played so much Half-Life 2, it's just kind of a gunship fight, okay. But yeah, overall fantastic map, really great visuals and a fantastic kind of visual language. Again, explains to the player how to do things without any heavy-handed kind of text on the screen or cheesy voiceovers or anything like that, so excellent. Really, really like this release. I'm looking forward to more by the same author, hopefully. I guess we'll find out. Alright guys, sorry for the gap in video production. I'll try not to take so long with the next one. I'll see you next time.